And now, you're tuned in to RBLR, the home of Tampa Bay's Reveler Sports.
Hello, RBLR Nation. I hope y'all are having a great week. Just wrapped up the preseason finally. So it's, football is back, but it doesn't really feel back quite yet. We still got one more miserable weekend until football is officially back in the swing of things. Tonight, we are mixing things up a little bit. We've got our co-host tonight is Zack Blain. Zack, say what's up to the folks for us.
What's going on, guys? How are y'all doing tonight?
Yeah, man, we're doing great. Happy to have you on the show. If first of all, just before we get started, if y'all are listening, if you wouldn't mind hitting that like or subscribe button wherever you're listening to, Apple, Spotify, wherever they make these podcasts these days, the youths and now. But so thank y'all for listening, and we're hoping to give you a great show. Obviously, the main focus this week is the 53-man roster has been released. All the cuts have been made. The practice squad is established. So we're going to talk about some surprises, what the Bucs' strengths and weaknesses are now that the 53-man roster is officially solidified for week one. Maybe take a look at around the league, maybe some surprise cuts, what our division rivals are doing, what they should have done, what they shouldn't have done, et cetera, et cetera. Let's just get right into it. So obviously the 53-man roster is here. Zack, who's kind of the biggest surprise cut for you? I know. I have a feeling, but I still want to hear it from your mouth.
Yeah, the biggest surprise for me, there was kind of two. So the biggest one, I'm going to go with Tyler Johnson. One of the best receivers in all of the preseason this year, and he's proven that he can play. So that one was kind of surprising, even though we have such a deep receiver room. But another surprising one to me, and I'm saying this one second because I think that he's going to be back, but the Logan Ryan cut was a surprise to me as well.
Right, yeah. Yeah, I definitely was a little weirded out by the Logan Ryan cut. I know that the majority of people are saying, oh, well, they're just cutting him so that they can put Jensen on the IR.
Yeah.
But it's still kind of a weird move. I guess they're thinking, oh, well, he's a veteran, and while Logan Ryan is a very quality player, I think he's going to do a great job this year. He's maybe not as highly sought after by other teams as some of the other younger guys, so I get it. But yeah, definitely a shocker. The Tyler Johnson, yeah, I'm with you. That was the biggest surprise for me. I thought for sure, like you mentioned, the big pre-performance, I thought that locked in his roster spot. But hey, the Bucs, there's a reason why we're doing this podcast right now. We're not
Exactly.
front office. Yeah. So,
yeah.
That's neither here nor there. The biggest surprise was definitely Tyler Johnson for me as well. But what do you think now, looking at the 53-man roster, now that it's finally put together, what do you think the strengths are? Are there any weaknesses? Like, we'll start with the strengths. What do you think the biggest strength of the Bucs is?
The biggest strength, I feel like we have to take quarterback out of the equation for this. Like, Brady is the GOAT for a reason. So taking quarterback out of the equation for our biggest strength, I've got to say either wide receiver or linebacker. Returning guys like Levante David, Shaq Barrett, and Devin White with the emergence of I'm going to murder his name. I know that I am. But Tryon Shoyinka.
We just call him. Yes, that's what I call him.
There we go. Okay, perfect. So with him coming on the way he did last season, I think he's going to be able to perform just as good as Barrett on the outside. And I think that's probably one of our best positions outside of the wide receiver and quarterback.
I'm with you. Yeah, I think that the wide receiver linebacker position is definitely the biggest strengths. I got to go wide receiver myself. When you have Russell Gage as your fourth best wide receiver, Julio Jones, that's kind of a 3A, 3B. That's a good sign. That's a really good sign. When you're cutting Tyler Johnson, clearly that means that you've got some really capable people in that wide receiver room. And the linebacking core as well. Like you said, man, JTS, David, White, Barrett. That's it's hard to beat. That's a really good front seven combined with the defensive line. I also think that now that I mentioned that, the defensive line is a huge strength. You got Logan Hall, William Golston, Vita Vea. I mean, just a lot of really great guys. Roach, you can't forget Keanu Neal Roach.
I feel like you can never forget him. If you
No.
do, you're not a real Bucs fan.
Absolutely. You can't forget Roach. Now that we mentioned the strengths, I guess now it's time for kind of the less fun part. What do you think the weaknesses are, Bucs, on this Bucs roster? Maybe it's just the starters are a little subpar, or it's the depth. What's generally speaking, what's kind of their weaker points of the roster?
So I'm not sold on our defensive backs. I know that we have. I love Antoine Winfield Jr. I think he's going to be one of the premier safeties in the league for a long time coming. Outside of our starters and Carlton Davis and Murphy Bunting, I am not sold on Jamal Dean or Delaney being solid starting corners if something were to happen to one of our starters.
Right. Yeah.
And then I was going to say I think that an obvious one is offensive line with all of our injuries. Right. I mean, obviously we lose Jensen for. I don't know if there's been a timeline to be said on when he's coming back, but we lose him, and then Hainsey gets hurt, and it just feels like we're one injury away from having basically a third string center or offensive lineman as a starter, which is kind of scary.
Yeah, you hit the nail right on the head. The weakness is definitely really glaring. The cornerback position, like you mentioned, D. Delaney. I like Zion McCollum because selfishly I'm a Pelicans fan, so the combination of
That's fair. That's fair.
Yeah, for sure. So selfishly, I hope that obviously as a supporter of the Bucs too, but I'd love to see him have a really great season. God forbid that someone gets hurt, but I'd love for him to step in. But am I convinced that a lower round pick like him is going to be able to fill those shoes? Carlton Davis, Jamel Dean, Murphy Bunting? No, absolutely not. I hope I'm wrong, but yeah, it's
exactly.
It's definitely not looking great. The offensive line, like you mentioned, absolutely torn to shreds by injuries so far. You lose two starters like that, and like you said, it's kind of one of those things. You're an injury away from kind of the whole thing collapsing, and that's obviously not what you want with any team, but especially not a team with a 45-year-old quarterback. As great as he is, and as much as he loves to seemingly run for the football and not slide, I don't know that he's the mobile quarterback that can kind of get away with not having a good offensive line. So with all of the weaknesses being said, do you think that maybe the Bucs address any of these positions during the season or leading up to week 1 through free agency?
I think that they have to. I don't see a way of us not at least trying to claim someone that I really wanted Tampa to claim was Alex Leatherwood from the Raiders.
Yep.
I know that he did not perform very well with the Raiders, but the Raiders are a trash can team at developing talent.
Right.
So do I think he would have come in and been a starter right away? No. But do I think that he's someone we could have built off of and kind of made into like a homegrown talent almost, kind of to where we mold him into being a good right tackle or a good, move him around the line? I think that someone like that who is very young and was such a high draft pick showed that he had some kind of talent before coming into the league. So I know that the Bears claimed him, but he was someone that I was very interested in before he got claimed.
Absolutely. And anybody in the secondary that maybe you're looking at?
I mean, bring back Logan Ryan, obviously.
For sure.
If we can bring him back, as far as free agents go, not that I can think of off the top of my head that I'd be willing to go out and sign. I would love to bring Sherman back in some capacity as maybe a safety or something, but just because I love Richard Sherman.
Right.
But I think the main thing is Logan Ryan, and I say him mostly because of his just veteran presence. He's been on multiple championship teams. He's been He's also been on, kind of the lowest of the low when he played for the Giants. So
For sure.
you look at that, and it's like he knows what it's like to play for a winning team.
Mhm.
More recently, a losing team. He doesn't want to be on a losing team anymore.
Absolutely.
And our defensive backs are all relatively young. So for me, I feel like Logan Ryan would be the key right now for me going forward in our defensive backfield.
Okay, I'm with you. Yeah, I see where your head's at, to quote our boy Musab. Yeah, absolutely. I definitely agree. Yeah, the offensive line, the Alex Leatherwood thing was a bit of a bummer, but at the same time, I understand where they were coming from because he was a first round pick and he is getting paid like a first round
Yeah,
playing them off of
exactly.
waivers. So, and he wasn't going to pass through waivers, unfortunately. That's he's still got a little bit of upside. But yeah, unfortunately, he's a second round talent getting paid like a first round talent. A lot of mock drafts had him in the first round, or in the second round rather, and the Raiders reached up and made another horrible drafting decision. But this is a Bucs podcast.
Yeah.
I'm not talk the Raiders.
I mean, we can trash on the Raiders a little bit because they've got some of the worst draft history I've ever seen in my life.
Oh yeah, I mean they broke it down. They don't have any of their first round picks from the past like 5 years.
I was gonna say it's 4 or 5 years where some of them are in jail, some of them are out of the league, some of them are traded,
right.
And I can't think of very many of them that are performing in the league to this point.
Right. Yeah. I mean, the only two guys that they still have are Clellan Ferrell and Josh Jacobs. Ferrell out of Clemson. He was a pass rusher. And both of them have their 5th-year options declined. So they're probably not going to be on the Raiders.
Which is surprising to me for Jacobs. I will say he is a stud. And if he's a free agent next year and Tampa signed him, I would be ecstatic.
Yeah. I mean, the Raiders finally actually hit on a pick, and then, they declined their 5th-year option on him. So that's how it goes. But yeah, I mean, so Leatherwood was definitely interesting if he would have cleared waivers for sure, because I think that he would have been willing to sign on with the Bucs because he probably understands he's probably not starting anywhere, especially after I think he allowed like 67 guys to just run right through. It was some crazy stat.
It was very high.
It was awful. It was terrible. So yeah, definitely there. But secondary wise, I was kind of looking at Chris Harris. He was with the Chargers last year. His prime is obviously behind him, and his prime was spent with the Broncos. He's definitely a slot corner, so he would definitely be kind of a backup to Sean Murphy-Bunting. But I was definitely looking at him as maybe kind of a possible signee. AJ Bowie is also the former Carolina Panther and also Bronco, interestingly enough. He would have been a very interesting signing. But we'll see. The Bucs, they signed Richard Sherman in the middle of the season last year, so maybe they do the same thing this year.
You were mentioning defensive backs. I completely forgot. There was one, if I'm not mistaken, he played for the Eagles, and when they traded for
Anthony Harris. Yep.
Anthony Harris. He was someone that when I saw he got released, I was like, huh, okay.
Yeah.
I would maybe be okay with them signing him as well.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Because especially if, like I said, God forbid, but if someone goes down, if Logan Ryan goes down, if Antoine Winfield goes down, they'll need some safety help because they don't, they're kind of dependent on a lot of undrafted rookies behind those guys. And that's
exactly
not really usually a good recipe. But yeah, I mean, he would definitely be an interesting guy to look at. And now that you've brought up, this is a great segue, by the way. Thank you.
You are so welcome.
Right. Now that you've brought up Chauncey Gardner-Johnson being traded from the Saints to the Eagles, obviously the Saints, a big division rival, probably the only competition that the Bucs have in the NFC South right now. They traded Chauncey Gardner-Johnson to the Philadelphia Eagles for a 5th-round pick. There were contract negotiations that just kind of broke down. A lot of people were very surprised, myself included. I thought for sure that they were at least going to consider holding on to him for a year because, they seem to be convinced that they can compete this year, and rightfully so. They have a talented roster. So, cutting a talented safety, a key member of that team, just doesn't seem like a good practice to me. But Zach, I wanted to hear your thoughts on it. How are you feeling about the Chauncey Gardner-Johnson trade?
Okay, so first off, very thankful.
Me too.
I do not want to play against him 2 times a year. He's very talented.
Absolutely.
Now, the issue is, unfortunately, I think that they got better at safety. I mean, you bring it like their safety, their safety room is so good. When you
Yeah.
have guys like Tyrann Mathieu,
Mm-hmm.
Marcus May from the Jets last year, I mean, those two right there are both Pro Bowl safeties. Like they're insanely talented, and you have guys like PJ Williams, who has been, if I'm not mistaken, in the league for a couple of years now, who's performed well when he's played.
Yeah.
And you take what you can get at that point. Again, I'm so thankful that he's gone,
Right.
but I don't think that they got worse from trading him.
Gotcha. Okay, I see. I definitely feel you. Yeah, it's tough because like you mentioned, they have a super deep safety room. So it was, I think, from their perspective, it was a tough sell to pay all of those guys high price money for a position like that.
Exactly.
It's not, it's not a key position. It's not the quarterback position. You don't want to invest that much money in a position like safety. So it's unfortunate for the Saints, at least, because, they like we've mentioned, CJ Gardner-Johnson, a really great player. He's also kind of a spark plug. He definitely brings a lot of energy to the defense. It'll be interesting to see how they kind of replace that. So yeah, I mean, overall, just the Saints get worse, and fortunately, the Bucs get better. And what better way to celebrate that other than getting yourself some merch? You can go to the RBLR store, the RBLR shop.RBLR. You can use a promo code Cannon, CANNONS. That's CANNONS for 10% off your total order. Feel free to stop by, get yourself some celebratory threads for not only the season starting, but also the Bucs not having to face Chauncey Gardner-Johnson Jr. anymore. So anyways, now that we have covered the division rivals and all of that, let's kind of move on to the play style. How are you feeling about the Bucs roster and how they're going to be able to play this year in this season? How are you feeling, Zach? So
we all know Brady has always liked to throw to the tight end. He's always had a good tight end that he's played with. I don't think that that's going to be the case as much this year. I think we're going to run the ball a lot more than we have been, mostly due to our line not being healthy right now. So I think we're going to see the season start off with us running the ball with Fournette and Vaughn a bit more than we're used to. And I think we're going to have a lot more, 3 wide out sets with Julio and Evans and Godwin.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I'm with you. Also, who knows how far along Godwin is off the ACL injury. So maybe them running the ball is also because of that. But yeah, I'm with you. Definitely going to be very run heavy. Like you mentioned, with the offensive line issues, they have to get defense just to respect the run, because then they can run some play action passes and be able to kind of ease the burden of that tough offensive line. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely going to be a lot more run heavy. I know people, oh God, Bucs Twitter seems to absolutely go Byron Leftwich. Oh, they run the ball on first down every fucking drive, or excuse me, every drive. And it's like, oh, well, he's trying to establish the run, because they also have Leonard Fournette. He's a really good running back. And it's,
Tom Brady, great running back.
Yeah. So, and Tom Brady loves the play action like any other quarterback. So it's just, you got to have some balance. You can't just have Tom Brady slinging the ball around 50 or 60 times a game. That's not winning football.
And we got to remember, he's 45 years old.
Absolutely.
Don't get me wrong. He's the greatest quarterback of all time. And I think he's still the best quarterback in the league. But you can't expect a 45-year-old arm to throw the ball 60 times a game.
Yeah, absolutely.
Especially when you have a running back core like Fournette and Vaughn, and even Rachaad White, our rookie this year.
For sure.
And I mean, that's not even including Giovanni Bernard. We have such a good running back group that I feel like is very underrated.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that I stay off Twitter when games are on, because you got these keyboard warriors that are like, yeah, well, how dare we run the ball when it's 1st and 10?
Yeah.
Are you gonna run it when it's 3rd and 10? What are you trying to do? I just don't get it.
Yeah, I definitely. Yeah, I'm with you. I don't really get it either. I'm guilty of it myself. I can be a couch quarterback. We all can. But I definitely try to avoid it. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I definitely am with you. Yeah, you brought up a great point with Leonard Fournette, how deep the running back room is. And we've also seen when they played the Saints a couple years ago, they broke the record for the fewest rushing attempts in a game, and they lost at home by 20 plus points. So
Exactly.
so we see how the unbalanced just pass goes. Doesn't go very well. So now we kind of go to the defense. I know their new head coach Todd Bowles was defensive coordinator last season, so I don't think that there's going to be much of a change. But do you see with any of the personnel moves that they made this offseason, do you see any changes being made in that regard at all, or do you think they're kind of going to just stick to what they've been doing?
So, do you remember a while back? This was quite a few years ago when we had a player named Mark Barron.
I do, out of Alabama. He was a linebacker.
Out of Alabama, yep. Well, he played safety when he first got into the league.
Yep.
And then when he got traded to the Rams, he played linebacker for the most part.
For sure.
I don't think much is going to change on our defense, but I can see Keanu Neal playing that same kind of role for us as a hybrid linebacker, on obviously more on coverage downs.
Right.
But I could see him playing a very sneaky, impressive role on our offense or on our defense. Sorry.
No, you're good. Yeah, absolutely. And the experiment of having him be a full-time linebacker was unfortunately incredibly unsuccessful last year in Dallas. But
yeah. But that's Dallas. They don't count as a team.
Defense. Yeah. So yeah, I'm definitely with you. The Bucs could definitely use a guy like that too. They haven't really had a hybrid kind of do it all kind of player in a very long time, I feel like. So it would definitely it would definitely be interesting to see how they use him, how they utilize him in the 3-4 defense that they love to run. So yeah, I'm with you. Definitely going to see a lot of blitzes. It's Todd Bowles. He's going to blitz a lot, especially with Shaq Barrett and JTS. We'll see how Devin White steps up. I feel like he didn't take a step back last year, but he definitely kind of came off a little undisciplined at times, which, he's ridiculously gifted sideline to sideline speed, just unlike almost anyone else in the NFL. But I definitely love to see him kind of hone in a little bit and use that athletic ability more effectively. I'm hoping to see that from him this year. Now that we were speaking about, we've been speaking about this 53-man roster and the depth. So how do you feel about what happens with injuries? Like, how scary is the depth on this team? Like, do you feel nervous if someone, obviously in the NFL, anyone gets hurt, you feel nervous because, they're a starter for a reason. But how nervous do you feel specifically, like for specific positions, like, maybe the running back room, wide receiver, corner, offensive line? How are we feeling about those specific positions?
Yeah, so that's what I was going to say. It all depends on the position.
For sure.
If we have a wide receiver go down, honestly, like as much as I don't want that to happen, I'm not that worried about it. Evans goes down. Julio Jones is the same, not caliber of player at this point in his career, but the same type of player.
I got you.
And so it's like if we have a receiver go down, I'm not stressing that too much. If we have an offensive lineman go down, I'm at like a threat level 9 out of 10 because it's scary. Aside from the offensive line, though, I can't really say another position that I'm that scared for. Cornerback is one that I'm like mid-level scared. But aside from that, I think we're deep enough in most positions to, if we have an injury, we are going to be A-okay.
I feel you. Yeah, I'm with you. I tried to, because obviously, like, people always bring up quarterback for some ungodly reason. And if your starting quarterback goes down, especially with Tom Brady, like, you're not making the playoffs. Like, it's just not going to happen.
You're telling me you don't have faith in Blaine Gabbert?
Fifth on that one, because Blaine Gabbert is like a decent enough dude. I don't want to roast him on this podcast, but it's just, it's the nature of being a backup quarterback. But regardless,
exactly.
Yeah, regardless, if Tom Brady goes down, obviously they're done. But yeah, with those other positions, wide receiver group, definitely not a super huge concern. But yeah, cornerback and offensive line, probably the two biggest scare depth pieces. They're definitely, if one of the corners goes down, it's going to be tough. Last week we saw how absolutely ravaged they were by injuries and how negative their team. And the offensive line, if Ryan Jensen's already down. We don't know for the extent of how long, but he's going to be out for a while. And if the offensive line suffers another injury, that would be super good. Might need to see some free agency help on that one. But with all that,
exactly.
Yeah, for sure. With all that being said, now that we're kind of looking at the roster as a whole, a lot of teams or a lot of people in the national media and stuff like that, they have us kind of ranked with the Rams and the Packers up top. Like, how do you feel? Because obviously the goal for the Bucs is a Super Bowl, so we have to kind of think of this in terms not of regular season matchups, but really how would the Bucs do against the Packers? How would they do in the Rams in the NFC Championship game or the divisional game? How are we feeling about that?
So the Rams brought back most of the same team. That's kind of scary because they were so good last year. The Packers, who do they have? Aaron Rodgers,
Right.
like, and don't get me wrong, I don't like Aaron Rodgers, but he is so good.
Right, for sure.
But I mean, people want to make the comparison of Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady and who's the best. No one wants to play with Aaron Rodgers.
Well, he's always on psychedelics all the time.
Yeah, whatever. he's taking adventures on legal psychedelics. Apparently, that's his thing. But
Yeah,
I mean, like his best receiver, Devontae Adams, who is a stud of a wide receiver, didn't want to play with him.
right.
I mean, it's that simple. So it's like the Packers. I'm not worried about the Packers. I'm not intimidated by their defense. Jair Alexander, one of the better corners in the game right now. He's a beast, but I mean, aside from him, I can't name too many of their players on defense, and I couldn't even tell you who their starting receivers are aside from Randall Cobb, and he's like 90 years old.
Right.
Right. So as far as Green Bay goes, I'm not worried about them. The Rams, terrified. They are a very good team.
I'm with you. Yeah, that's kind of where my thoughts lie as well. Yeah, the Packers are definitely, just because they have Aaron Rodgers, they're always at least going to be a slight concern. But yeah, I'm with you. Their wide receiver room is atrocious. They lost, they lost Devontae Adams, but they also lost, USF guy Marquez Valdez-Scantling.
Exactly.
Bulls. Yeah, hell yeah. That's the big loss for me.
Yeah, and he's another young, very good guy. Like, I think their best receiver right now is Alan Lazard.
Yeah, and that's a tough
like
Yeah.
You go from Alan Lazard being your third string receiver, at best third string,
right,
to him being your star stud receiver. Like,
yeah.
I'm not too worried about that. And I can't even name their tight ends.
Yeah, I think
where they have Mercedes Lewis still.
Yeah, I think he's there more as like a blocker, but
yeah, exactly.
Robert Tunyon's the starter. And
okay, he's good. I'll give you that. He's solid.
But he's also used to being able to run a little bit more freely with Devontae Adams running routes out there. So it's going to be a little tougher because he's now kind of their best option, quote unquote, in that.
Yeah, the only stud player they have for me right now, aside from Aaron Rodgers, is Aaron Jones.
Yeah, and he can't do it all himself. He also might not stay healthy. He has his own litany of injury issues, as do most running backs in the NFL. So yeah, it's tough. It's definitely
it's a lot easier to defend the run when you're not worried about who you're throwing the ball to.
For sure, absolutely, they can load up the box. But now we can actually get to the real threat for the Bucs. The Rams, they're definitely, like you mentioned, they're running it back basically. Stands Von Miller, but they added Bobby Wagner. So it's you lose some, you win some, and then the Rams, they seem to be winning a lot. But I will say injuries have played such a huge factor with every team, every Super Bowl run. Obviously, teams have to be very fortunate with injuries. The Bucs were incredibly fortunate when they won the Super Bowl a few years ago, and the Rams were very lucky with injury last year. They didn't really suffer anything too major. I mean, Robert Woods going down was tough, but they replaced him with OBJ, so obviously it wasn't that huge of a loss. So yeah, if the Rams manage to somehow get lucky enough with the injuries again this year, I don't know if the Bucs can contend with them, but that's just not going to happen because it's the NFL. Those things don't happen. So yeah, I mean, it's definitely it's going to be a tough matchup if they do have to face the Rams, like in an NFC championship game or whatnot. But if they face Rodgers in the NFC in the divisional round or the championship game, he'll just choke again because that's what he does.
That's what exactly. He's got what, one ring, right?
Yeah, for sure. And when he plays the 49ers, he's always like celebrate. Yeah, no interceptions. Like Aaron Rodgers, we only scored 10 points. No interceptions. Oh, like, all right, man, congrats. Like, but yeah,
Well, and then the thing with the Rams is, I mean, you mentioned injuries, like not having very many injuries last year, or very many key injuries, I should say. They're already dealing with injuries. Like, if I'm not mistaken, Matthew Stafford's already got a bum arm.
right.
And he's, I mean, he's not old, but he's not young. So
Not a young
when
buck.
you look at a quarterback who starts having arm issues before the season starts, that's not very promising. So
Yeah, especially at his age, like you mentioned.
Exactly. So it's kind of, if Stafford is healthy, I said it before, I think he's one of the most underrated quarterbacks in the league, and I think him coming to LA kind of cemented that, okay, he can be that guy. It just, he played for the Lions. So if he's healthy, I'm again terrified of the Rams. If he's not Matt Stafford of normal, I don't even know who their backup is to be worried about.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, if Matthew Stafford's not 100%, then the Rams aren't going anywhere.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'll definitely be with you on that. So yeah, I mean that kind of wraps it up. We're definitely going to be looking a lot at our week 1 matchup against the Cowboys next week. Definitely looking forward to that. Yeah, I mean, it's just exciting to have football start back up. So yeah, you got any last thoughts, any final thoughts on the roster or anything for our listeners, Zach?
Yeah, so before we get out of here, I wanted your opinion on the Panthers.
Oh, right.
Because we talked about the Saints, and we don't really have to talk about the Falcons because they're gunning for the number 1 pick, I think.
For sure.
But
Bryce, they're looking for.
The Panthers, I think, are scary good. Like, not listen, I know our producer is giving me the eyeball like I'm crazy. Baker Mayfield, mark my word, Baker Mayfield is a very talented quarterback. I know a lot of people don't like him. He's very polarizing. You either you love him or you hate him.
Right.
I love Baker Mayfield, and
Oh,
I think that them getting Laviska Shenault made their offense very, very good. If CMC can stay healthy and they can throw the ball to Laviska Shenault, who they got for like a 6th round pick, I think.
yeah. They got.
They're going to be a very strong offense.
That's interesting. I mean, with me, I just, I didn't know if man, if I'd have known that you were a Baker Mayfield apologist, I don't know if I would have done. No, I'm just messing with you.
No, that's fair though, and that's what I'm saying. It's love or hate. A lot of people don't like him. I think that he was mistreated in Cleveland, which Cleveland does not care about how people are treated. Clearly, look at Deshaun Watson. But he was the first quarterback to bring them to the playoffs in a very long time. And they just basically dumped on him.
Right.
And now I think he's coming back on a revenge tour. Like, he is, I would not be surprised to see him be, I don't know if he can win comeback player of the year, if that's even really but I'm telling you, if it's possible, he's going to win it.
I feel you. No, I mean, I could see it. He could have a good enough year. The Baker Mayfield redemption arc. Yeah, that could be cool. Be a cool little storyline. I mean, it is Cleveland. It's got to be karma. They've got to have some kind of karma. So hopefully he, I'm rooting for him. I may not think much of him as an NFL quarterback, but that doesn't mean that I think he's, total turd or anything. So,
Yeah, exactly. He's not Johnny Manziel.
Yeah. Right. Other than maybe when he's playing the Bucs, but other than that, all the success in the world to him. But yeah, I mean, the Panthers are definitely an interesting team to look at, but it's a big if CMC stays healthy because he has shown that he can't stay. Yeah, past couple of years. And yeah, every time I bring up the Panthers, they got Sam Darnold and Baker Mayfield, and Josh Rosen just got released. I really hope they bring in Josh Rosen on the practice squad or something, because then they could have the holy trinity of mid quarterbacks that were taken before Lamar Jackson. So that would be absolutely fantastic. That would be just prophecy. I mean, it would be just like a bunch of really below average backs talent. Just remind everyone, hey, there was a unanimous MVP that got picked after all of us, and we're all on our second or third team. So that would just be wonderful for me because, Yeah. Anyways,
Hey, watch out. Again, so I would like to point out as well, Lamar Jackson is my favorite player in the league. So I love Lamar, so I agree with you. Like, he's better than all three of the quarterbacks that were drafted before him.
for sure.
But I will also say he's about to be on his second team too. So
Oh, I don't know.
you think the Ravens re-sign him? You think they wouldn't have already done that?
I just think I don't know. I think you can't let a quarterback talent like that walk, because then he goes somewhere else and probably wins a Super Bowl or something. But
I agree 100%. Like, if he goes somewhere else where they can, I mean, the Ravens are doing everything that they possibly can to make this team revolve around him.
right.
But it's like they're doing it in the wrong way, it feels like.
For sure. They just haven't given him anyone to throw to.
Exactly. And then they're like, everyone gets on Lamar for being a quarterback who doesn't throw for very many yards when his best receiver was Hollywood Brown.
Yeah, and he's got, Mark Andrews, a wonderful tight end, but yeah, Hollywood Brown, he had like it seemed like he had like 600 drops within like the first week. It was just
and that's why he's traded. That's why he's not on the team anymore.
Why he's in Arizona. But yeah, so that kind of wraps things up for us. We want to thank the listeners for listening. Just remind y'all, like and subscribe, hit that like and subscribe button for us. But yeah, that's really all we got from RBLR Nation, RBLR Bucs. Thank y'all so much for listening. Hope y'all had a great time listening to us, chop it up, talk some Bucs stuff, and hope y'all have a great rest of your night. Thank you so much again for listening.
Thank you for tuning into this presentation by RBLR Sports. On your way out of the stadium, please remember to like and subscribe.